God created the world and declared it to be good. The United Reformed Church's environmental policy sets out how we, as a body of people committed by our faith to caring for God's creation, will respond to one of the gravest challenges facing humanity today, the climate emergency. I'm sure I don't need to share with you the science of this. It's headline news on an almost weekly basis. But let's remind ourselves of its impacts.
Global warming has become an urgent problem. The emissions from using fossil fuels in our economy and our lifestyles are driving dangerous changes to the climate. We're already seeing the consequences of this around the world. Coastal and island communities in the Pacific are having to relocate due to sea levels rising. Farmers in southern Africa are facing crop failure due to drought. More extreme weather patterns, from cyclones to heatwaves, are leaving a trail of destruction. If we don't limit global temperature rises, scientists warn the effects for people and planet will be increasingly catastrophic.
The starting point for the policy is a theological one, that, as the psalm puts it, the earth is the Lord's. And as Jesus said, we should love our neighbour as ourselves.
As Christians, we believe that God has entrusted creation to our care. It is a gift that should enable all life to flourish. People, plants, animals, earth, sea and sky. Loving our neighbours includes our siblings around the world and future generations. In the context of climate crisis, caring for creation and loving our neighbours involves living responsibly, acting for the common good, and challenging injustice. It also involves speaking up, to call on our leaders to rise to this moment and look beyond short-term interests to protect the future of the planet.
The environmental policy seeks to enable the United Reformed Church to respond in faith to the urgency of the climate emergency by looking especially at what we can do across the whole of our church life to reduce our carbon footprint and therefore our contribution to the changing climate. In particular, it sets out an ambition for the URC to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2030. Net zero means reducing our carbon footprint by as much as we can, but recognising that while the rest of society is still making the transition to decarbonise, some emissions are inevitable. So for a period, we may need to offset these activities by investing in projects that take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. Why is the target 2030? Well, if we're to limit global temperature rises, the budget for further emissions into the atmosphere is very tight, and it's therefore vital that we make the transition to low-carbon ways of living as early as possible. The Independent Climate Change Committee, which advises the government on its climate plans, has said that the 2020s must be the decisive decade of progress and action on climate change. The sooner we make the necessary changes, the better. While a net zero target might seem ambitious, practically it would make a huge impact if all churches switched to renewable energy suppliers, if every congregation and synod was engaging with the eco-church or eco-congregation programme, if plans were in place to improve the environmental performance of buildings in the church's care, if funds were not invested in fossil fuels, and if there was carbon offsetting of necessary travel and unavoidable fossil fuel energy use. Widespread adoption of these practices over the next 7 years will get us a lot of the way to net zero. So the policy sets out the steps we should be taking across our church life to achieve our net zero ambition, alongside our broader environmental concerns. Importantly, it asks each part of the church to take responsibility for looking at its own activities and identifying what changes it can make to contribute to this. That includes the synods, church house, assembly committees and local churches. It particularly asks us to look at what we can do to address our travel, our buildings and our energy use, which are the most significant contributors to the church's carbon footprint. We all have a part to play in this. There will be lots for many of us to learn, but there are lots of tools and resources and advice available, which you'll find on the URC website. And best of all, God is with us as we make this journey together.